already making comments. I see Malcolm's already tried the Arran and the Signal Hill. I was looking forward to the 3 this evening. Good evening, David Woolcock. Yeah. Good evening, Richard Wingrove. Lots of comments. Cool. And another thing you may notice is that I'm not, in fact, Jess or Andy. So sorry about that. I'm Jake. Some of you will have seen me before. I work for Master of Malt and Pour and Sip in lots of different guises. And yeah, I have been on Pour and Sip before, but as a guest, not as a host. And that was at the Christmas one. And that was very good fun indeed. But yeah, usually Jess or Andy can sort of cover each other. But unfortunately, they're both preoccupied tonight. And so yeah, you're stuck with me. But we have 3 cracking whiskies, 2 from kind of newer distilleries, one from an older one, but one that's sort of celebrating 25 years of sort of being back on stream and yeah, doing some very cool stuff. So let's get stuck in. Let's bring in Emma from Benromach.
Hello. Hiya.
Emma, do you want to sort of explain to our members a little bit about sort of who you are and yeah, all about Benromach?
Yeah, my name's Emma. I am one of the visitor centre hosts for the whisky. I've been in the job for about a year now, just over. Every day's a learning day. I have no so much whisky or gin background. The reason I came into the job, I came in a bit of a random way, shall we say. I graduated university during COVID, and during the time there was no jobs going or anything. It was hard to get a job in the area that I graduated in. So there was a little cleaning job happening at a distillery. So I took that, and then within a year, just after the year of starting, our gin host, she left to go down south and pursue a career somewhere else. So I applied, and here I am. So nothing to do with the degree, but we move. I absolutely love it. I think it was the right move for me, and I'm just loving every single day. It's something different. It's always...
I love that. Everyone's has like a different little story that sort of got them into the industry. Or I joined Master of Malt. I was supposed to be a temp for a few days, putting some liquid in some drams and in some little dram bottles, and that was 12 years ago. I was only supposed so yeah, yeah, absolutely love it. Okay, cool. And yeah, so sorry, Benromach. Don't let me interrupt you.
No, you're fine. So yeah, Benromach is a very traditional Speyside distillery. We were founded in 1898 by a man called Charles C. Doig. He got his name, and where he mostly became known for was the invention of the pagoda roofs that would sit on top of the malting facility within a distillery. Now, the distillery went through various amounts of owners throughout the years, having, its triumphs and its losses, just like any other. However, in the 80s, as I'm sure a lot of people will know, the whiskey industry took a little bit of a dip. People were turning to cheaper alternatives such as gin and vodka at the time. And when this happened, a lot of distilleries were unfortunately hit in a negative way that led them to closures, including Benromach. Benromach sat, mothballed for 10 years up until 1993, when Gordon and MacPhail, the owners now, came in and bought the distillery. However, when they bought it, everything that had been in it from previous distillations had been stripped out, and the whole buildings was left bare. So they took 5 years to do it all up again, put everything back in, and we restarted and reopened our doors in 1998. The way that we've been making our whiskey from then is very hands-on. Our character is made by hand for genuine character, and we genuinely think that we do this every single day. Everything in our distillery is hands-on. We have no computers. The most thing that we always say on our tours is the most modern thing that you'll see on our tour is the tractor that pulls the casks off to the warehouses. Everything else is very old-fashioned and hands-on. There's no computers that deal with our distillations. We have a computer upstairs, but it's simply for data entry. It's nothing to do with the actual distillations. We use wooden washbacks, the copper stills. We use manual spirit safes. Even our filling store next door is manual as well with our cast team. So we're very, very hands-on, very old-fashioned, and we think all these little bits give us the Benromach that we produce and that we're very proud of today.
I'm just going to read out a few comments that are coming in. People saying good evening still. Phil pointing out the big line of drams behind me. Yep, that's good Lord, Jake, says Joe. Somebody's already on some tasting and enjoying the peatiness, but sort of trying to work their way through the rest. Joe F says you can't beat a good Benromach. And Jeff just pointing out that it's our birthday again. So yes, that is all super exciting. I suppose that's the point, is to sort of contrast that, like you say, with there is a lot of automation in some of the other distilleries throughout Scotland. So I guess, are there certain things that really make Benromach stand out, in terms of manual processes, or things you're particularly proud of, throughout production?
I think we're proud of everything that we do here, especially the way in which we distill it. We, as I mentioned, we're a very small distillery. We have 2 stills. In fact, behind me, we have 1 wash and 1 spirit, and that is what makes our Benromach spirit. We have 4 distillers who work by themselves on shift, and everything up to our spirit, when we're collecting our hearts from our heads, is all down to our distillers, experience and their call on things. They have to listen for certain noises. They can work out when stuff needs to go just by purely listening and having that experience behind them. So we're very lucky to have the team that we do. But all these small things, like the wooden washback, the semi-louter mash tun, the cloudy wort, things like that, we all think that this adds to us and what makes Benromach, even down to the cask selection that we have.
Yeah, we've got that boutique whiskey company here. I don't know if that's... Is that Dave? Is he here? Is that Sam? I don't know. Anyway, he's saying about the manual spirit safe and saying love Benromach. Jeffster's saying he's visited, so it's a great tour if you're ever in Speyside. So
good. We aim to give a good tour to everyone.
And then other people are already into the tasting notes. So shall we?
Yes.
Have a look at the 15-year-old, which is in the set this month and is a cracker. So let's.
Yeah. So we have our 15-year-old here. This is part of our core range here at Benromach. Now, our core range consists of a 10-year-old, 15, 21, and cask strength. Now, they're all the same distillation types. They're all the same mix of bourbon and sherry casks. They're all the same marriage. What's different is purely the age years, and we find that this age years really can change the dynamics of the whiskey that you're tasting. Now, with the 15-year-old, the first time that we released it was in 2014 or 2015, and we did before have a 12-year-old, but it didn't quite have everything that we wanted it to be a progression from the 10-year-old. So we tried a 15-year-old, and we thought, that's it. It just, everything kind of nailed in at that point. With the 15-year-old, you'll see in your glass that it's this beautiful golden amber color that sits in your glass. We use a light filtration just so we can keep the color nice and clear and nice and crystal for your presentation as well. On the nose, we have much of this rich creaminess that you'll find. Now, with the mix of bourbon and sherry, our whiskies tend to lean on sherry a little bit more, and you'll find this a little bit more than in the 10-year-old. With the 15-year-old, the sherry comes forward a wee bit. You'll get this fruitiness, this spiciness, but you'll also get this typical Benromach character that you would have seen in the 10-year-old, but it's a much smoother, kind of more chocolatey as well on the nose. And
definitely getting the chocolate. Yeah, some chocolate dates and.
Yeah, we always find that some of our guests will either lean on the 10-year-old that they prefer, or they lean on the 15. So it's always interesting at the end of their tour to see which one people preferred. With the 15-year-old, people often describe it as almost a Christmassy cake, because you get this fruitiness, you get this denseness and this complexity to the whiskey, but you also get subtle spices and this forest fruits as well. So it's a beautiful smell on the nose.
Yeah, the members are sort of they're touching on that. We've got peaches, apricots, and some nice sweetness from the smoke from Steve Coleman Williams. Joeff's got berries, pine needles. Peaches again. Enjoying the fresh wood fire smoke. Got some toffee, strong berries. Yeah, some chocolate again. So also hitting on a lot of the notes kind of around what you've been mentioning there.
Yeah. With the smell as well, if some people go into a tasting and they'll, especially if they're new, they'll stick their nose in the glass and they'll take one big inhale and you'll just simply overpower your nose. So we always recommend, just take short little sniffs in your glass and this should do it nicely for you.
Good advice.
I can drink this without water. However, some people do enjoy putting little drops of water in, and this just helps take any kind of little sting that people find is too harsh for them out of it, and it opens up the flavors a little bit more. So we always say there's no right way to drinking whiskey. As long as it tastes nice to you, that's the main thing. So enjoy it,
Yeah, TACD, lovely fruit and woody one, this. And we've got sort of Joe F again. So we talked about the gentle enveloping smoke with burnt sugar, toffee, cream, more red fruit. I'm going to preempt a question, which I think is going to come up if it hasn't already.
Okay.
Which is, I'm sure someone's going to ask about ppm. So
yes, so our core range is all slightly peated at 12 parts per million. So for a Speyside, it's typically mostly unseen for a core range to be peated. It's more like a special edition that we saw anyway. Now with our core range at 12 parts per million, we find that it just gives us this beautiful, elegant, and almost rich kind of smokiness that we get, but it's not hard hitting. It's not the first thing that you taste when you have the whiskey of Benromach. It's kind of lingers in the background, and you'll find this on the palate more than anything. So you'll get it first. You'll get your dessert spices. You'll get your cinnamon and your raisins. You'll also get your maltiness and your sultanas. But at the very end of it, you should have this little kind of smokiness that sits on your tongue quite well.
Yeah, as Mike's getting some licorice with his peat. Christmas pud there for P. Barrett, I think Christmas pud. So there's sherry and bourbon casks in here. Do you know? Are we allowed to know sort of proportions, and is it? I know there's some first fill. Is it all first fill?
We are only first fill casks, so we'll take a cask in from our bourbon cask from Jim Beam in the US. We'll take our sherry casks in from Jerez in Spain. We'll use these once. We then sell them back to the cooperage, and they'll make benches, chairs, whatever your heart desires out of a whiskey cask, really. But we can't tell you exactly what it is on sherry to bourbon, but we can tell you that it leans on the sherry, and you can tell that by that colour that sits in your glass in front of you.
Yeah, it's a lovely rich colour and
lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, all that fruit coming through. It really does work very well, I think.
As well, on the taste, when it comes to the finish of the Benromach 15, it's quite a long finishing whiskey, I find. It's got that nice creaminess to the finish. You have a beautiful mouthfeel to this whiskey as well with that. But in the finish, you'll have these late hints of smoke, as mentioned. And it's just the creaminess, but you'll get that subtle spice that just kind of slowly fades off from the end of the whiskey as well.
Jeff is speculating on the type of sherry. Do we know if this is sort of Oloroso casks?
Oh, I couldn't tell you.
he's enjoying it. Let's have a look. Christmas cake, yeah, again, real Boinga. These things that covers it, sort of berries, chocolate, spices, toffee, fantastic. Joe's added some water, it's brought up a bit of creaminess. Steve Coleman Williams has got some marzipan going on with his Christmas cake. And yeah, Joe's enjoying his neat. So yeah.
I'm glad. It is. It's a beautiful jam, and we're very proud of it. It's won a lot of awards in its time as well. Two of the most recent ones we have is we won silver in the Whiskey magazine for the World Whiskey Award, and then we won gold in the International Wine and Spirits as well competition. So we've done well with the 15. We're very proud of it. And it's one that a lot of the staff here at Benromach, they lean for this one as well. Out of all the whiskies that we do, the 15 seems to be the popular one that people come in for because it has everything that our core range has, and it sits beautifully balanced. Not that the other ones aren't, but the 15 for some people has enough richness in it that it's not too sweet or too spicy for them, but it's a little bit more mellow than the 10-year-old that we have.
Yeah, I'm getting sort of like some hazelnuts, and I think we have little tasting cards. I didn't show these to you before in the sets as well, and I think Jess mentioned sort of like a grassiness as well.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, very nice. So yeah, chocolate continues with dried fruit and smoke. Malcolm Tucker enjoying that. Richard Wingrove getting some licorice now, along with the fruitiness. Yeah, there's a treat of a dram. And can you tell us, perhaps, is there some exciting things in the pipeline at Benromach up and coming?
There's always something exciting happening at Benromach. There's never a dull day here at this distillery. We do have a distillery exclusive that is in the works. I'm not allowed to say what it is, but it is something rather special. So if you're in the area of Marussia, if you're close to here, then pop in and you'll see something special. But we also have, just now we have 2 contrast ranges that have not long came out. We have an air dried and we have a kiln dried contrast range that goes alongside with our beautiful organic whiskey and our peat smoke for those who like a strong peated whiskey. The air dried is much lighter. It has a more minty flavor to it. The kiln dried obviously has that more woody, more in-depth flavor to it. So we have a few things we're working on, a few kind of bottles and a few more exciting things coming in the way. Whether that comes at the end of this year or the next year, we'll just keep you guessing, really. So
that's cool. I was going to ask you the difference between the two. Yeah, you answered it yourself. We had the contrast peat back in some point in 2021, I think, August maybe. And that went down very well, I think, from memory. And people on the finish sort of now talking about really nice finish, raisins, toffee, Mike Wally. Getting some leather as well. Just catching up with comments there. Yeah, cool. And I don't know. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we enter into Italy?
No, I just thank everyone for joining and thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's my first one. So if there's any questions that do come up later, I can do my best to get the answers if I don't know them. So just give me a shout. But yeah, enjoy your drums, guys. Slán bhá.
All right. Cheers. So I'll take Emma off screen there. See, still getting used to this. Not done hosting. But thank you very much. That is obviously available in the Pour and Sip store. And yeah, very much enjoyed that, as it looks like many of you did. Let me bring in Mr. Sam Simmons as we go to a brand new country for Pour and Sip, Italy. We don't never had Italian whiskey, funnily enough.
It's so nice to see you. Grazie to come here. Okay, I'm going to stop.
We're going to keep this classy, huh?
You know me. Hello, everybody. What a club. I love Pour and Sip. We've been here before. We've been here together, I think, Jake, and apart, and with Jess and with others. Just watching the comments, what an awesome group. Super engaged, and it's a great program, this. Trying cool whiskeys. 3 really different ones tonight, but always, yeah. Cool. Chuffed to be here. What do you want to talk about?
I'm just seeing some last comments coming about the Benromach, saying Jeff is saying that'd be a good one to introduce whiskey to someone. It's a solid shout. And then Gio says, "I love you, Sam," all in caps. So there you go.
I was going to do the whole Tarantino, that whole scene where he's pretending they're pretending to be Italian, but I thought, let's just leave that. Otherwise, PUNI will never sell us casks again.
Yes. So explain to us, briefly for anyone who doesn't know who Sam Simmons is, and about sort of Mon bottlings, I guess, to start with.
Yep, my name's Sam Simmons. I got into whiskey similar to most of you guys in a club. It wasn't a subscription club. It was a members club and like a university club in Edinburgh when I moved there in 2002. And that's where I caught the whiskey bug. Much more than a drink. Yes, it made me feel great. And I sort of floated home that first time, but it was the history, the stories, the people, the ties to taxation and immigration and all the historical moments. It really just enamored me and still does. And now I'm lucky to work with whiskey. So I've worked with a few different companies. I've worked with the Whiskey Exchange, with Master of Malt, with Douglas Lang, Balvenie as an ambassador for a long period, and I've been head of whiskey here at Adam Brands since 2018. And we bottle boutique, that boutique whiskey company, Darkness, and many others. We innovate and test new things, often that we try on Master of Malt or other partners of ours around the world. So we can just try to keep pushing that whiskey envelope and creating. And so we source casks. We don't own a distillery. We have relationships with distillers like MacPhail, owners of Benromach, like Gordon MacPhail, where we have relationship with distillers or private individuals or other brokers, and we acquire casks and try to do cool things with them, or we bottle them as single casks like this PUNI, for example. In this case, it's under the Master of Malt label. Now, this isn't the PUNI. This is just the label I have to just show everyone so they know the full bottle, what it looks like. And that's what we're trying tonight is a PUNI bottle for Master of Malt.
Indeed. And this is, relatively sort of young distillery, hence there's not a lot of there's not a lot of liquid much older than this to be had, I guess. Or
no, well, this cask is from the first year of their production, so it's a family, and I think a few of the members. I hope I get all the stories right. I apologize if I don't. It's just a Google away. Don't trust me. There's no AI. There's barely any I. So anyway, I think some family members were traveling in Scotland and got this romantic idea of, back home where they lived, which is just in the hills. I say hills, in the Alps, that the tributaries run into Lake Garda and this beautiful part of northeastern Italy. Water is the most important ingredient in whiskey making, and they had an abundance of it. I think they started romantically thinking, like, why don't we give this a go? And there was an architect in the family, and if you've seen an image of the distillery, I recommend you look it up now. PUNI.
I was about to say, like, the building is incredible. Yeah.
Very striking from the outside, but quite traditional inside, modern and for hard lines and everything. But, Forsyth stills, all the things that matter are still traditional. They have Forsyth stills sort of in the shape of a sort of the Glenmorangie, those gin stills at Glenmorangie, but with it not as tall of a neck. But really, really, yeah, traditional distillery in a very modern setting. So this family got together and said, let's start distilling. They started distilling in 2012. And the name PUNI comes from the water source, or one of the rivers nearby. It's actually not the water source. They take alpine water from somewhere else, but that's the running river near them that runs down, like I say, into Lake Garda. High up in the Italian Alps, anywhere you look is just beautiful. And the whiskeys are special. I mean, they look like many New World distillers. They look to Scotland for inspiration, but they also do something new because they are getting grains from neighboring countries, Austria and Germany mostly. And they mix them together in pot stills. So they can't call it a single malt because it's not only malt, but it is from a single distillery. But they're blending barley, wheat, and rye in what they produce. So they class it. We have to class it to bottle it as a blended whiskey. Although in Scotch terms, a blended whiskey means from more than one distillery. This is just from one distillery, but the spirit type is a blended whiskey. This is from the first year of their production, 2012. All the information I think is on.
I think it's kind of a rye growing area traditionally, and all three grains are malted. Is that right?
Yeah, so they malt exactly, which is also unusual, but is going to help create the enzymes needed to make booze, and thus civilization is born and babies are made. But also, it gives a fudgy, banana-y flavor that's quite unique. And we make a world whiskey blend with that boutique whiskey company, and to make the world loves Jack Daniels, and one of the keynotes of Jack Daniels, why it's so mixable and so favored around the world, is ethyl amyl acetate, which is like a banana, that foamy banana, fake synthetic banana flavor. And I think PUNI's full of that characteristic in their spirit, and much more, but that characteristic. So when we were going to make the world whiskey blend, that's when we started speaking to PUNI and saying, we'd love to get some of your spirit. And that's when we got this Pinot Noir cask as well to do something cool with, which we've now done.
Yeah, so you're sort of talking about your relationship with the distillery as well. I mean, are there a lot of independent PUNI bottlings out there?
I think Boutique was the first that I know of. That doesn't mean I know every distiller. But in our peer group, Johnny McMillan, I think Barry Brothers and Rudd had one last year, maybe, or the year before. And that's the only one I can think of, actually. But there could very well be more. I'm not sure. But that tradition of sort of indie bottling, when we speak to our partners with Boutique or with Master of Malt for the single cask stuff, it's sort of a foreign concept, and it's something that I fell in love with when I lived in Scotland, learning about whiskey and living there for a decade. It's a unique culture that bred Scotch whiskey to be this place that the small country has 140 grain and malt distilleries that have all survived. Most of them have survived over 200 years. It's incredible. And that's partly because they're interdependent, and this trading and sort of hedging on not just the bottles you put out or that you sell to blenders, but also on brokers and sort of secondary market is a foreign concept to even craft American distillers or Australian distillers. And so it's even to an Italian distiller where, malt became Scotch single malt became a thing because of Italian bottlers in the 60s and 70s. But even in Italy, it's sort of a strange idea. What do you mean you want to buy one of our casks and bottle them? So it's still pioneering every time you do it. Yeah.
Got a few comments coming in. Malcolm says, "Nice shirt, Sam."
I rang my children are in Norway, and I rang my kids, and the youngest said, "Why are you wearing that shirt, Daddy?" And I took that as a diss.
TOCD's enjoying a subtle, complex nose. Steve Colin Williams loves Lake Garda. We've got some cream, nuts, getting the rye, citrus, linseed being mentioned, Terry's chocolate orange, frangipane. Lots of great notes coming through.
Yeah, but all those notes. So the nutty and creamy stuff, that I totally agree. And it's a great characteristic. I know this is already at a low-ish ABV for some of you nerds in the Pour and Sip club, but I do think a drop of water, or even like a teaspoon full of water, really lets this become much more dessert-like. It doesn't turn fully into like Frangelico or that kind of thing, but because it doesn't have the sweetness, but it's got a lot. It gives a great deal, like a tart characteristic.
Possibly the best tasting that's come in is Bazooka Joe Bubblegum.
Oh, nice.
Got a very specific, like brand specific tasting note.
Totally, but also with that, I can't see the notes. I don't know who wrote it, but that's a great one. And there's something about drinking whiskey that you got to remember: when you smell something or when you detect something, it's because it's affecting a part of your brain that's directly connected to memory. Mm-hmm. Bazooka Joe, that just saying the phrase brings me back to the smell and the taste and folding out the comic, and it's amazing. That's a great tasting note.
Jeff is also asking whether PUNI actually just have a sort of what we would consider a single malt.
I don't think they make one. The things that they release, am I allowed to share my screen? Because I think I've got an image of the bottles. Can I just quickly share?
I don't know. Can you?
Well, Pour and Sip, we're going to do it first here. Welcome to the great unknown. I hope it doesn't go to where I was looking up underwear, because I'm running out of underwear. Did that work?
I think I have to click. Let's see.
You're the producer. You got to bring it.
Here we go. And
two of the releases I know. Very sleek looking bottle, very modern.
Great looking bottles.
And these are Alba. Oh, this one's Vina, actually. So there's Alba. What's the other one called? Jesus, I'm forgetting it now. Anyway, and they refer to the wood type, or the previous occupant where they put the whiskey. So this one must be a wine cask. I'm actually not sure what that one is. I should have looked this up. But Alba, it would be American.
They are handsome things.
They're beautiful. All right, take me out. Stop my sharing before something terrible happens.
Yep.
But those are the only two I know. I don't think they do a pure, a single, just a barley distillation. I don't think, but I can ask them. I don't know who asked that, but I'm happy to look it up or message them tomorrow.
Yeah, Joe's really getting the malted wheat. There is sort of there are different cereal notes in there, aren't they? Like you can tell, it's got this like sort of fascinating kind of mash bill or whatever you want to call it.
It becomes, I was just about to say that, man. Exactly, Jake. It becomes like a mash bill because it becomes like an American style, Scotch style, but new whiskey. It's distinctly Italian, distinctly from where they're from because of the unique conditions of where they are, the water, but also the maturation. You mentioned the whiskeys are young. Yeah, but they get proper cold and proper hot in the summer. So the casks are sweating even more than my chair thinks I am today. The casks are going, and so you do get more of the things you want, the catalysts for change, which would be all the extractive and interactive things that happen with oxygen and with wood, happen at an accelerated rate, I think. So a 4-year-old whiskey can very much drink like a 10-year-old in Speyside.
We've got some more notes coming through. Mike says, smooth Chardonnay on steroids.
So, okay.
We've got bananas and peppery spice. Real Boinger's enjoying that Bazooka Joe reference. Unique in taste, even among bubblegums.
Yeah.
And yeah, everyone loving those bottles. Ali's getting the rice spice, grassiness, some oak, pepper, citrus. Yeah, all those good things. Almost like a Sazerac, they say, a hint of anise.
Really? So that linseed and that anise thing, I haven't picked up, but now that you mention, it's a great thing about sharing a whiskey with people, whether it's virtually or not, is it prompts your mind to open up to these new senses that you sort of block to. But I do know what you mean, but I hadn't picked that up before. But that part of the flavor wheel, yeah, definitely. It's quite a complex whiskey, and it does have that American style because of the mash bill, but in the Scotch style because of the distillation method, and it's a cool distillery, lovely people. And I haven't mentioned it yet for the geeks here, long ferment. A lot of people talk about long fermentation these days. It's a 96-hour, 100-hour or something fermentation, which is a lot in Scotch whiskey terms. Anyway, even in American whiskey terms, it's lengthier.
And obviously, this is bottled at 47%. So people are now trying it with a bit of water, finding it's becoming a bit more desserty. Bringing out the palate more. A dessert dram.
It really is, but it's delicate. I think one of the notes you shared early on, Jake, was that someone said it's delicate. It is a delicate, really elegant style of whiskey, but that doesn't mean it's not complex. There's lots going on, and this is just one cask that we bought that we thought was great from a Pinot Noir cask, Pinot Noir finish, I should say. It was 3 years in bourbon, and then 1 year in Pinot Noir. But everything they produce, if you find any more of it, it's really, really lovely, interesting, conversation starting style of whiskeys.
Fantastic. And is there anything else you want to say about exciting Mom bottlings or things? Other things you do?
Well, I think Mom bottlings are interesting because you're really lucky. I mean, Master Malt, a lot of these, so PUNI, Adnams.
We relaunched these not that long ago, right?
No, exactly. So we did a little test because when I met you, Jake, there was Master Malt bottlings. I didn't work at the company yet.
Yeah.
They were in those sort of Bimber style bottles. They're taller bottles. You guys might recognize them. And then it sort of stopped. And when I got here, it wasn't something on the radar because we had our eyes on export and sort of more on that side. But I think there was demand for it, and it's a great avenue to take a few risks and to price things to be drunk. I have to be honest. You look at this package, nothing about it is really costing anything except the whiskey. It's all about the drink inside. These are things not to be put on a shelf and stored in some collection that no one's ever going to see before. They're to be shared and enjoyed and talked over. And you see on Twitter, I get called out all the time for mistakes on the label. And yep, it happens. There are humans who work here, and we make mistakes. But I find that fun, and I've always found that fun with before I came here. I'm noticing it on Ben's whiskeys or your whiskeys, Jake, and still on Thompson Brother whiskey or Whiskey Sponge. I love finding little errors or things to talk about. It's like, oh, is that really a single cask and all that kind of stuff. That's what makes it fun. It's not an attack. It's just it's the dialogue. It's the conversation. And whiskey really is it's mandatory that it's a conversation. So so those are cool. There's lots of them. I don't know what we started with.
A lot. But they have been really popular. And like you say, we do get a lot of positive feedback for the pricing of them. And Foreign Sip members can get this one for even cheaper. So that's pretty exciting. Cool. Thank you very much, Sam Simmons.
Pleasure, buddy. Thanks, Jake. Thanks all, guys. Take care.
So yeah, Italy, another country, important step. Which I know some of you are ticking off countries, so very exciting that one. Real Boinga, very complex taste, difficult to pin down. Steve Coleman Williams, loving the rye on the tongue, dangerously drinkable, says Mike. Lovely complex dram. So which brings us to our final dram of the three we're going to taste with our lovely guests, and it means I should bring in Gordon. Hello, Gordon.
Hello.
How you doing?
How are you?
Do you want to talk to our members a little bit about who you are and, of course, about Torabhaig?
Yes, so Gordon Hughes. I work for a company called Marussia Beverages UK. So I'm actually more on the sales side of it than all of these industry legend ambassadors and real hardcore whiskey people that you usually are accustomed to. So go easy on me tonight, please. Marussia Beverages are the UK distributor of Torabhaig whiskey, amongst other things, but it's actually a sister company of Mossburn Distillers who built the distillery at Torabhaig and things like that. So because I'm based in Scotland and it's a sister company, I find myself here tonight talking to you about Torabhaig. History in the industry, I've been with this company for about 13 years, so it must be an okay place to work. And prior to that, I was a bartender, bar manager, so I've come from that side of it. So it was when I found that I couldn't stand up to do 12-hour shifts, I figured I had to go and do something else, but it was going to be in the same industry, if you like. So that's me. Here tonight to talk about Torabhaig, which is a relatively new distillery. So it's on the Isle of Skye, on the southeast coast, the Sleat Peninsula, which looks over the Sound of Sleat towards Mallaig on the mainland. We built the distillery there we started building the distillery there in 2014, finished building it and creating first spirit flowed from the still in 2017. So we've been going about 6 years, just 6.5 years now. It's an absolutely beautiful distillery in an old farmsteading. So it looks like it should have been there for a couple of 100 years, whereas it's 6 years old. It is the first legal whiskey distillery to be built on the Isle of Skye for over 200 years. So quite exciting. And what we do there is we have taken inspiration from the Isle of Skye, and that shows in the whiskey style that we make, the distillery style that we make. We talk about it being elegantly rugged, because Skye is 1 minute breathtakingly beautiful, serene, wonderful, and then 10 minutes later it's the wildest place you've ever been in your life.
Absolutely.
So that's where we take our inspiration from, and that's why we talk about our whiskey being elegantly rugged. We're also very much committed to the community on Skye. There's no point in building a distillery and just taking everything away and bringing people in to make your whiskey for you, and not really giving back to the community. So we have 9 journeyman, apprentice brewer and distillers at the distillery who all came. They were all residents of Skye, and they came from other jobs. So one was a postman, one was working on the ferries, one was a tour guide at the other distillery on Skye. And what we've done is we've hired these people, we've brought them in, and we are training them up to become fully fledged brewers and distillers, which is giving back a little bit to the community as well. And then you'll also see a lot of Gaelic language on our bottlings and on our packaging. because that is part of the culture and that is part of the community on the Isle of Skye. So we think that that's very important to shine a light on and give keep going for the future. So yeah, relatively new distillery. Looks like it's been there for ages. We're making some beautiful whiskey that is still quite young. So yeah, that's us.
I'm just looking. So Jeffster's visited this distillery as well. He's visited you as well. So he's
Good.
Ever well travelled. He says that you've got a better tour than the other one on the island, although he does admit that they were doing some building work at the time.
Okay.
And then people are always diving into the whiskey. I mean, it's interesting what Mike started with talking about birch and plywood and things, and sort of not necessarily smoke off the bat, whereas Dave's put his nose in and he's like, okay, right, this is a bonfire. So this, it's interesting sort of the perceptions of peat and
yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we are really keen to talk about and really keen to discuss. So, I mean, all of the real geeky details are on the back label of the bottle. So on the back, you've got here the barley types that we're using for it, the yeast strains that we're using for it.
Which is, yeah.
And then it also has in-grain phenol levels and then residual phenol levels. So we start with...
Sometimes people do talk about one or the other, and it can become confusing.
It's confusing to people. But essentially what we're doing is we want to make an elegant spirit, as we said, light and delicate and clean, well balanced, that does have peat smoke as at its heart. But it's not... We're making something that is more along the lines of bonfire smoke, ashy bonfire smoke, gunflint, fireworks, more kind of fragrant peat smoke than the more aggressive TCP, medicinal kind of character of some other peaty whiskies. So we wanted something that was nice and balanced. Some people will talk about, or some people will dive into it and think, whoa, that's really heavily peated. And other people will go, it's not that heavily peated.
Yeah.
And it is just perceptions of it.
That's the interesting thing, isn't it? That's kind of where we started with the comments, and people are still chatting. Steve Coleman Williams said it's reminding him of a wildfire in Madagascar, which another well-travelled guy.
Well-travelled, nice.
Some salty kale as well. Mike's getting some grassiness and some beef glaze.
Okay.
We've got Pexman saying that he feels like he should be sipping this under the Northern Lights, which is a nice image.
Nice.
And yeah, some people really enjoying this. Like Jeff said, this is what I've been searching for. A great hit of peat, oily finish. Yeah, really enjoying that. So my understanding is kind of that the ppm. I'm going to again preempt the question because it's coming. Is very high, at the start of the process. But that's kind of tempered through long fermentation. Is that fair?
Yeah, there's a few things that we do. Yes, it's technically more heavily peated than some of the real big hitters out there. And what we do is through the process, we do temper it. What we wanted to create was a real balanced peat smoke, so not being dominated by the kind of medicinal notes of it, as I say. So yes, long fermentation is one of the things that we do. So we're averaging about 90-hour fermentation. So if you don't go too deep in with your nose initially, I think you get a lot more of those fruity notes, maybe pink grapefruit coming through there, certainly some citrus, maybe even some apple, orchard fruit kind of notes coming through there. If you go deep in, for me, you get more of the kind of heavier bonfire smoke notes and things there. So the fruitiness will come from the longer fermentation that we do. And then after that, we're running a really slow distillation so that there's lots of copper contact and lots of reflux. The reasoning behind that is that we wanted to have that delicate, elegant, balanced whiskey initially we wanted some quite tall pot stills, but because we're in a listed building, we were kind of limited to what we could do there. So we had to take the roof off, put the stills in, put the roof back on, and therefore we could only have stills that were as tall as the building would allow. So we consider the old farmsteading there as one of our whisky makers because it does influence the style of whisky that we make. We also wanted 9 washbacks, but we could only fit 8 in. So we have a washback going spare if anybody is interested. So we run a really slow distillation to get the same effect as a very tall still. And then the last thing that we do in the production process to create that flavour profile and temper the peat is we cut quite early and we have quite a high cut point. And what that does is we're getting the more fragrant phenols, but we're not getting the heavier, bigger phenols coming through there. And that's a big part of tempering it down. So we have more balance from the different kinds of phenols that come through, the different categories of phenols that come through. And that gives us that lovely balanced peat smoke along with a nice fruitiness from the fermentation and a nice bit of sweetness, maybe some honey sweetness and some barley sugar sweetness coming through there as well.
Yeah, I think you get some like sort of biscuity sweetness as well. I think Jess on the tasting cards, I think she put kiwi as like sort of the fruitiness, which I thought was really good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got that kind of citrusy note, but it's a little bit richer than citrus.
And we've got comments coming in. Cordite apparently is the word for all those sort of like flinty gun kind of
Fantastic.
smells.
Let me take a note of that.
And then yeah, we've got some baked apple going on. And then see what's happening is I'm reading down these comments, then new comments come in the bottom. It's just knocked them all up, and now I'm like, okay, where am I? See, Jess and Andy are pros at this. I'm just
You're doing well, Jake. You're doing well.
I did see another one. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so Steve was saying, yeah, smoky, oily, really nice. He is saying, damn, this is a strong box, which is always a good comment to be coming through at this point in the evening. Everyone enjoying all the drams. So, and I'm going to have to ask. I mean, so it's Torabhaig with the BH being a V, a bit like Bunnahabhain, right? Which I think maybe we can all keep up with. But what is the correct pronunciation for this this expression?
So this is Torabhaig Allt Gleann.
Gleann. Allt Gleann.
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Gleann. So this is the second bottling in what we're calling our legacy series, which is the journey through to our 10-year-old being released in 2028. So the first release was the 2017. It was a very, very small release. And then we've come on to Allt Gleann. We will have 4 more bottlings after this.
Right.
Probably all with Gaelic names on them as well. Allt Gleann itself is one of our 2 water sources. So that's why we named it after that. So yeah, hopefully people like the whiskey. I think it does have a beautiful balance of fruit, sweetness, touch of that maritime characteristic to it, and a bit of oiliness, and then all that lovely, beautifully balanced peat smoke coming through as well.
Real Boinger's now getting some black cherries.
Okay.
Jeffster, who visited, is saying he was on a detour and didn't have room at the time, but he's ordered a bottle now from the pour and sip shop. So
good stuff.
Again, all the bottles available in the pour and sip shop with a nice discount, of course.
Good.
Lovely stuff. So can you sort of, are there any other bottles outside the Legacy series that you'd like to talk about, or can you give us a preview, perhaps, of what
This
the
is
next
where
legacy series, mate?
I'm not sure what I'm allowed to talk about and what I'm not allowed to talk about. But
So we always get like the scoop or like or
That's
just,
okay.
can't say anything. So one or the other,
yeah. So this bottling will be around until start to middle of 2024, and then it will probably disappear. We do have a batch strength release of Allt Gleann coming out actually on the 18th of September. So that will be bottled at full strength of 61.1% ABV. So that will give people the opportunity to try it completely unreduced, drink it how they like. I have had a taste of it and I've given it to a couple of people so far, and the comments seem to be, I haven't told them what ABV it was at, and the comments seem to be, once they find out, there's no way that that's 61.1.
yeah.
The reason we wanted to do this is to show the confidence that we have in the quality of spirit that we're producing at the distillery. There's nothing, this is, Allt Gleann itself is between 3 and 5 year old whiskies. We've only used ex-bourbon casks, so it's 70% first fill ex-bourbon and 30% refill casks that we're using for it. So we want the distillery characteristic to shine through. We think that's important, and that will, especially with a new distillery, you want people to know what you're about. You want to put your marker in the sand, I suppose. That will still continue through all of the other releases. It will be the same distillery style. We will have the third bottling coming out at the start of 2024, which will be called Croc na Moine, which means the Hill of Peat. It will have a little bit of sherry cask influence in it, but it will by no means be a sherry bomb. It's just a little zhuzh to it, but we will still have that same distillery characteristic coming through. There are also potentially some completely different bottlings, having said that we want to have our distillery characteristic come through in everything we do. Each year we give 2 distillers 2 weeks each to run the distillery and produce whatever they want to produce as part of their apprenticeship and learning. Yeah. So they have, some of them have gone wild, some of them have gone quite traditional, but we will have those whiskies to do something with over time as well. So I'm sure there are plans for them, but I'm not sure how much more I can say about that at the current time.
No, that sounds very exciting. That's very cool.
So yeah, we should have a legacy series bottling coming out each year up until 2028, and then there might be some other interesting things as well.
I thought there'd be some more comments coming through there. I can see when like Gio's about to send a message through. It's like she's typing.
Hopefully people enjoy it.
Yeah, no, that's great, Gordon. Thank you very much. Yeah, and hopefully we'll see you at the end with the others in just a bit.
Absolutely. Cheers.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Cool. So the Allt Gleann, also available in the membership store, of course. So before we bring the others back and ask what's usually Andy's mean question, let's have a look at the other 2 in the box. So you can sort of enjoy these, in your own time. Obviously, have a sip if you want, but we're just gonna go through these two quickly, like normal. We have Signal Hill whiskey, which I was a bit worried about this Volk not on it to start with, but they're from, I'm going to say this wrong now, and there's a Canadian in the backstage, Newfoundland. I'm looking at Sam's reaction. Which it's in Canada. That's Viking territory, right? They definitely landed there, so they're playing on that. This is actually Dan Aykroyd's involved in this as well. So if you like Ghostbusters, cool. But yeah, it's corn and barley really kind of rich brown sugar. Yeah, I get some nettle tea in there. It's interesting stuff. It's named after the hill where they received like the first transatlantic wireless signal, hence Signal Hill. Yeah, so very interesting Canadian whiskey. Pretty versatile, I would imagine, as well. But yeah, quite tasty by itself. It's also non-chill filtered, which for 40% is pretty cool. And then rounding off the set is an Arran, which is very cool. The Bothy, which, yeah, I mean, Arran founded in kind of the mid-90s. I can remember when, their 10-year-old was very young. So yeah, sort of a little bit ahead of, a couple of the other distilleries that we've talked to tonight in their journey. But yeah, this is a quarter cask release at 56%. So cask strength, really high surface area to volume ratio. So you can get a lot of interaction there. Yeah, I mean, I love an Arran, and this one is kind of got that desert. It's like a desert island whiskey, but like in like literal terms, it's got like fruity, like tropical fruits. I always get like a sand duney kind of vibe with Arrans, but this one's just sweeter, bigger. So yeah, very cool whiskey to round the set off with. Then let's have a look what comments I've missed. Yeah, Malcolm's he's digging into Signal Hill. He's getting some damp planks. It's a cool note. Some smoked paprika, red fruit, some heat from the ginger. Yeah, nice. Mike saying thank you and good work to me. Thank you. Yep, I'm doing my best in Jess and Andy's stead. And he's also visited both of the distilleries in Arran because they've got lag now as well, haven't they? And it's also in Malcolm's basket. So there we go. Let's bring back our lovely guests. Hello, Emma, Gordon, and Sam. Thank you very much for tonight. I mean, I've sort of blasted through those other two whiskies, but the three that we enjoyed this evening were fantastic and went down really well. Fermentation times kind of came up a few times. I don't know if maybe that's something we can geek out about for a minute while people are deciding on which one was their favourites from the night and maybe their favourites from the box. I mean, you hear about long fermentations a lot, which both of some of these whiskies here have benefited from. Is there a place for shorter fermentations as well? Maybe Sam, do you want to start that bit of chat?
Well, yes, I would. Thank you, Jake. And if you can feel me kicking you under the desk, it's thanks for the prep. Yeah, so time, right? What is it? It's a construct. And the longer you leave something, the greater it gets, or the worse.
Yes, I'm just,
poetic
theme for the evening, my friend. I can't.
Poetic.
As I rub my shin.
If you're a case for shorter, that's kind of interesting. There's definitely a risk with longer, and everyone always thinks things used to be better in the olden days. First of all, right? So we all know that obviously you would have left something fermenting when the people working at a distillery would have moved down the process to take the mash or the wort from the day before to get it through the process. Then they'd be off for a weekend, so there would always be at least one long ferment. And so consistency becomes an issue, and that's what famously was a problem. Well, problem to some, but it creates flavor and it creates something robust. But it certainly comes with risks. I don't know if you could do shorter. I'll pass it to someone else to try and waffle the way through that.
Financially, there's probably a benefit in shorter fermentation.
Well, yeah, sure. Just thought I'd put it out there. I don't know. There's a lot of.
Yeah, we talk long fermentations here of 90 hours and stuff like that, but if you then look at some Caribbean rum distilleries and things like that, you're looking a little bit more than that.
But that's a wicked example, because that sort of summarizes maybe what you're saying, Jake, is that I think on one spectrum, the long, if you can generalize, long is going to create fruity, with the risk of other things that verge on sick or dairy or rotten milk and things like that. So that there's that risk, but this way is fruity, and short would be grainy, malty, fudgy, which is good too. That's a positive as well. I think you
For sure. Yeah.
we're rum. Yeah.
Just thought it was interesting. So we've got just having a look. Steve Howdy Dewey's saying he's not a smoky whiskey person. So obviously we've had a bit of peat in the Benromach and a bit more perhaps in the Torabhaig. But I mean, I think probably tuck into that Arran and obviously the PUNI is unpeated. It's one of those things, isn't it? There's so many things in whiskey where things are subjective, things that can be a bit Marmite. Some people love them, some people hate them. We've had some weird whiskies as well over the months in Point Sip, and some things really appeal, and maybe the next thing will be your one. What kind of are there any particular types of whiskey perhaps that you like, Emma? What sort of styles do really are up your street?
So for coming straight into whiskey, obviously peat was quite intimidating, especially if you're new to whiskey. You taste peat and you think, oh, okay, this is something. But with not just because I work here, but we do an organic whiskey, and there's no peat in it at all. So it's a much smoother, creamier, toffee-like whiskey, and it's a beautiful dram to have to anyone coming into whiskey. I always recommend try the organic. Some people who are mad whiskey nerds absolutely love the organic because it's something different to what a lot of places are starting to kind of tune into now. But apart from Benromach, I do like a Cardew 12. I'll be honest, I do like a Cardew. Cardew's quite a nice dram as well.
So there's a couple of great recommendations there.
I think it depends on your flavor profile as well. I think a lot of maybe slightly the older generation are stuck. They know what they like, they stick to what they like. Whereas with these newer kind of different types of whiskies, they don't have to be crazy whiskies or anything. They can just be slightly different. And I think it opens a lot of new alleyways for whiskey, and it shows that whiskey is really diverse. And even though we're all working towards the same end product, which is whiskey, we're all different and we all are proud of what we're doing. So I think when people try different things, it expands for them as well, and it just creates this lovely community that we're in.
100%.
Beautifully said.
Yeah, that was gorgeous. I agree.
Oh, thank you.
So people are trying to pick their favorites, and they're saying it's hard to choose. TACD has gone for the PUNI by the slimmest margin, but they're saying they're all excellent. Greg's enjoyed the Torabhaig from tonight. Pexman, Torabhaig by a whisker from Benromach. So they're all getting some love. I'm getting some. I'll say sympathy, maybe more than love. But people saying I haven't done a terrible job tonight, so that's always nice.
Oh, even great.
Close one tonight. Ali's going for the PUNI. From the 3 tonight, Benromach, I think Torabhaig. So yeah, it's pretty split. Yeah, I think we've enjoyed.
It's worth saying, isn't it? There's no absolute though. So whatever your favorite is tonight, it might be different tomorrow. Just keep that in mind. Don't close any door in whiskey discovery and trying something new all the time, because that's otherwise it'd be a pretty boring subscription set. Same taste, same 3 guests every time, same 3 flavors. So no, keep trying, and even your palate, your mood will change, and you might find a different favorite.
100%, yeah. I mean that's bang on. I mean different moods, different times, different occasions. I've seen tastings done where like you go into like a room that's one color, and you go into another room that's another color, and they give you 2 whiskeys blind, and like, haha, it was the same whiskey. You just thought it was completely different in the 2. Yeah.
Cool.
Another day that it wasn't 30 degrees during the day, you'd probably choose something else.
Yeah. There is that. Yeah, it is a scorcher. I've got this little fan here that is doing absolutely nothing because I've got like the lowest setting, like so it's not making any noise. But so thank you so much, you 3, for joining us. Yeah, not least because of how blooming hot it is, and also to all our viewers and members. Yeah, I've had great fun, and yeah, cheers.
Thanks very